effort that's being initiated actually by Wendy and I in coordination with MIT Presidency Institute's Societal Transformation Lab. So we've been meeting. We had a meeting a month ago, and this is our second meeting. So we'd like to welcome you to our second meeting. We'll be meeting at least 2 more times in April and May. Likely not in the State House, but we're hoping to have venues at 2 of the colleges that are involved, UVM and Middlebury, where we'll be meeting there. Partially because the State House rooms in April and May are difficult to book if you're not legislators, and we're not. So, today we changed our agenda to allow for students who are involved in the student climate strike to make proposals for things that they think we can do to address the issues that the Green New Deal addresses, which include climate change, runaway inequality, racism, and poverty. So we're going to be open for that. I do know that the students who are coming from Middlebury College are going to be a little bit late. So we're going to wait for them to get here before we introduce that resolution. But we're open to other things that people want to discuss or consider. With that, I've asked Carol Irons, who is an elder of ours. She's an Abenaki elder. And I want to acknowledge that what we're doing is taking place on ancestral Abenaki territory. And we're trying to hold that in our hearts as we move forward with this effort. So I've asked her to offer some words of welcome this morning.
First, we give thanks. The Spirit moves through all things, moving in unique and seeming the one school. And we give thanks to all the life forms on the web of life, including the 2-leggeds. And yes, I appreciate the recognition that this is Abenaki country. And all of those who usually are not given voice in these proceedings, I really ask with all my heart that you keep them first and foremost in your thoughts and your plans and your proposals, your ideas. They can live very well without us. We cannot live without them. That kind of humility, recognizing that we are just one thread in the web of life, I request that guide our thinking, because this is a societal transformation project, and you can transform the shape and direction of society if you don't recognize that humble part that we are. I give thanks for the people organizing this. I give thanks for all of you who came out and drove, set aside your day to participate in this effort. Ask that we step back from our own agendas enough to be able to hear each other in a good way, listening with our inner ear and trying to see others' perspectives with our strong eye, which is here, getting beyond our own perspective and widening it to a very different transformational shape. So we welcome all of you. We give you thanks for your presence. Let us proceed.
Thank you, Carol, and welcome again. Please move forward.
Yeah.
We have seats at the table, there's seats up front, especially if you're here from a student organization. We want you in the front, you guys, come on. So as I mentioned, we're going to be proceeding using the town meeting format, which typically uses something akin to Robert's Rules of Order. But before we do that, since we're still a small group, I would like to go around and have everybody introduce themselves. Say your name, where you're from, if it's a town in Vermont, if you're here representing an organization officially, that would be good to know as well. So, why don't we start with Wendy?
I'm Wendy Weber from Marlborough, and I represent the Societal Transformation Lab at the Presidency Institute.
Hi, I'm Leahy I'm a student at Middlebury College and a representative of Sunrise Middlebury. We're from a group that's of college students and high school students in Middlebury. We're on strike for climate today, and we're really honored to be here.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm also from Middlebury College and Sunrise Middlebury.
I'm Bob Kennedy. I'm from Westmore.
My name is Olivia. I'm also from Middlebury. I'm really excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Parker. I'm the public engagement coordinator for Sustainable Montpelier Coalition. We're working on multi-occupancy electric vehicles in pilot project in Montpelier and continuing open space along the new street.
I'm Madge Rossinoff, I'm from Teaching Vermont, and besides interest in the Green New Deal, I'd like to talk with anybody who's interested in regenerative agriculture. That seems to be on the high radar, so hi.
I'm Catherine Lothar, I live in Palace and I teach at Goddard.
Nick Swanberg, the resident of Montpelier, with the Center for Climate Action.
Check from Montpelier, Vermont, and from Vermont Energy Education Program.
Donald DeVoyle, Montpelier resident, adjunct instructor of the multistakeholder system.
Claude Murphy from Barrytown.
My name is Bailey Grubbin, and I am a master's student at Vermont Law School in South Carrollton.
Jesse Womack, I study sustainable ag at Vermont Law School.
Denise McMartin, I'm part of a newly formed group in Northfield Energy Committee. We'll be trying to advise the town and help them make some good decisions regarding climate change and energy. Great things. I'll go. Rebecca and Steve.
Jerome?
I'm Jerome. I'm covering today's events for Orca Media.
Hello, I'm Erica Campbell with Office of Senator Sanders. I work mostly on agriculture issues. Haley Carroll covers energy and environmental issues for the Senator was able to have, so I'm glad to be here today and listen to you all. Thanks.
Tom Berry with Senator Leahy's office. I cover ag, environment, and energy issues for the senator from his Bruins office.
John Tracy, Senator Leahy State Director. We appreciate the invitation. We're here to listen and learn. Thank you.
I'm Jim Christensen from Cal School, Cal High School.
I'm Senator Warren from Bristol.
Carol Irons still.
Alec Fleischer, I'm an environmental policy major at Middlebury College, and along with those folks, I represent the Sunday Night Environmental Group, the rest of Middlebury, Sunrise Middlebury, a bunch of connected organizations.
Thanks, everybody. Oops. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gwendolyn Hall-Smith, and I'm here with Vermonters for a New Economy. So, with that, let's begin our meeting. I had a gavel, I counted into order. I think the first order of business would be to approve the minutes of the last meeting, which someone who was at the last meeting would need to move to do.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Great, thank you. Alex, make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All right, the minutes are approved of the meeting in February. Now with that, are there any proposals for us? One of the things we asked our members to think about in advance of today's meeting was things that the Vermont legislature could do to advance the Green New Deal for Vermont. And I think we'll have a motion from one of you guys.
Yeah, I think so. Do you want to say? Well, one thing we've been researching and would like to discuss is a resolution to endorse the federal Green New Deal on the state level. This would be a resolution, ideally joint House and Senate, and what else? Oh, it would be modeled after past legislation or resolutions such as the one that was against the resolution against Trump shutting down the federal government. That was a couple months ago. Maybe a month ago, I don't even know. And then we have a second part, if you want to discuss that.
So let me just clarify for the people that are here, because all of you are going to vote on this. We're in a town meeting and we're in it together and we're going to vote. The motion, if I'm not mistaken, was for the Vermont State Legislature to endorse the federal Green New Deal resolution that was introduced by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Markey. Is that the same one you're talking about?
Yes.
Great. And it would be modeled after, it would be following in the history of other resolutions that have passed the legislature to support something happening at the federal level. Is that right? Does everybody understand that so far? And there's a second part to that motion.
Yes, so we were thinking that this is one way that the state legislature thanks, sorry. So we're thinking that this is one way that the state legislature could take action in Vermont to support the action that Sunrise and many other environmental justice focused groups are taking across the country. So it's something we could do here to say Vermonters are on board, our state representatives are on board, and that if everyone wished, we could also include in this resolution something about working towards a state level Green New Deal, or that could be separate. It's really whatever everyone would be envisioning, but sort of joint supporting federal action and also working on it at state level.
Okay, thank you. So the motion, as I understand it, is to endorse the federal resolution for a Green New Deal. Now, if you didn't take one of the copies of this resolution as you came in the door, there are over here on the table. I just suggest that you get it, because once we have a second, I've asked people to help us read through it so that we all hear it and enter it into our record what we are asking the state legislators to endorse. So the first part of the resolution is to endorse the federal resolution on the state level, and the second part of the motion is to encourage the state to do a Green New Deal for the state of Vermont. Is there a second for that motion?
I second the motion.
Emily seconds the motion. So the motion was made and seconded. Now we'll open the floor for discussion. But before we discuss it, what we're going to do is read it. I've asked Ethan Sonneborn, who's also a high school student, to start reading through the first part, and Blue can read once he stops, which is just on the first part of page 3. And we'll just go to the end of each page and keep going around the room until we're done. It's not that long. So you want to start, Ethan?
Sure. Resolution recognizing the duty of the federal government to create a new deal. Whereas the October 2018 report entitled Special Report of Global Warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the November 2018 Fourth National Climate Assessment Report found that 1. Human activity is the dominant cause of observed climate change over the past century. 2. A changing climate is causing sea levels to rise and an increase in wildfires, severe storms, droughts, and other extreme weather events that threaten human life, healthy communities, and critical infrastructure. 3. Global warming at or above 2 degrees Celsius beyond pre-industrialized levels will cause A. Mass migration from the regions most affected by climate change. B. More than $500 billion in lost annual economic output in the United States by the year 2100. C. Wildfires that by 2050 will annually burn twice as much forest area in the western United States than was typically burned by wildfires in the years preceding 2019. D. A loss of more than 99% of all coral reefs on Earth. E. More than 350 million more people to be exposed globally to deadly heat stress by 2050. And F. A risk of damage to $1 trillion of public infrastructure and coastal real estate in the United States. And global temperatures must be kept below 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrialized levels to avoid the most severe impacts of a changing climate, which will require A. Global reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from human sources of 40 to 60% from 2010 levels by 2030, and B. Net zero global emissions by 2050.
Okay, Blue, just continue to the bottom cause of that change?
Whereas because the United States has historically been responsible for a disproportionate amount of greenhouse gas emissions, having emitted 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions through 2014, and has high technological capacity. The United States must be the leading role in reducing emissions through economic transformation. Whereas the United States is currently experiencing several related crises with one, expectancy declining with such as clean air, clean water, healthy food, and adequate health care, housing, transportation, and education are inaccessible to a significant portion of the United States population. Two, a 4-decade trend of wage stagnation, deindustrialization, and anti-labor policies that has led to hourly wages and overall stagnating since the 1970s, despite increased worker productivity. The third worst level of socioeconomic mobility in the developed world, because before the Great Recession, C, erosion and earning and bargaining powers of workers in the United States, and D, inadequate resources for the public sector workers to confront challenges of climate change at local, state, and federal levels. 3, the greatest income inequality since the 1920s, with A, the top 1% of earners accruing 91% of gains in the first few years of economic recovery after the Great Recession. B, a large racial wealth divide amounting to a difference of more than 20 times more wealth between the average white family and the average black family. And C, a gender earning gap that results in women earning approximately 80% less as much as men at the median.
How about over back there to John Tracy? Can you pick up where we left off?
I was following, where'd you leave off?
At the end of C on page 4.
This way we can be sure that it's
I'm going to read off bigger print here. That'll be fine. Whereas climate change, pollution, and environmental destruction and exacerbated systemic racial, regional, social, environmental, and economic injustices, referred to in this preamble as systemic injustices, by disproportionately affecting indigenous peoples, communities of color, migrant communities, deindustrialized communities, depopulated rural communities, the poor, low-income workers, women, the elderly, the unhoused, people with disabilities, and youth, referred to in this preamble as frontline and vulnerable communities. Whereas climate change constitutes a direct threat to the national security of the United States by impacting the economic, environmental, and social stability of countries and communities around the world, by acting as a threat multiplier. Whereas the federal government-led mobilization during World War II and the New Deal earned the greatest middle class the United States has ever seen, but many members of the frontline and vulnerable communities were excluded from many of the economic and societal benefits of these mobilizations. And whereas the House of Representatives recognizes that a new national, social, industrial, and economic mobilization on a scale not seen since World War II and the New Deal era is an historic opportunity. 1, to create millions of good, high-wage jobs in the United States. 2, to provide unprecedented levels of prosperity and economic security for all people in the United States. And 3, to counteract systemic injustices. Now, 4, immediate. Want me to go into the results?
Well, maybe Tom can pick up.
Resolved. That is the sense of the House of Representatives that it is the duty of the federal government to create a Green New Deal, To achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition for all communities and workers. B, to create millions of good high-wage jobs and to ensure prosperity and economic security for all people of the United States. C, to invest in the infrastructure and industry of the United States to sustainably meet the challenges of the 21st century. D, to secure for all people in the United States, for generations to come, clean water and air, climate and community resilience, health and food, access to nature, and a sustainable environment. And to promote, E, to promote justice and equity by stopping current, preventing future, and repairing historic oppressions of indigenous people, communities of color, migrant communities, deindustrialized communities, depopulated rural communities, the poor, low-income workers, women, the elderly, the unhoused people with disabilities, and youth, referred to in this resolution as frontline vulnerable communities.
Okay, you want to move on? Emily? Oh, Erica, sorry. And goals described?
Sure. The goals described in subparagraphs A through E, so paragraph 1 referred to in the resolution as the Green New Deal goals, should be accomplished through a 10-year national mobilization referred to in this resolution as the Green New Deal mobilization that will require the following goals and projects. A, building resiliency against climate change-related disasters such as extreme weather, including by leveraging funding and providing investments for community-defined projects and strategies. B, repairing and upgrading the infrastructure in the United States, including by limiting pollution and greenhouse gas emissions as much as technologically feasible, by guaranteeing universal access to clean water by reducing the risks posed by climate impact, and by ensuring that any infrastructure bill considered by the Congress addresses climate change. And just a side note, we're considering an infrastructure bill at the moment. Meeting 100% of the power demand in the United States through clean, renewable and zero-emission energy sources, including by dramatically expanding and upgrading renewable power sources, and by deploying new capacity. Keep going.
Why don't we continue with Bob Murphy?
Okay.
Building and upgrading?
Building or upgrading to energy efficient, distributed, and smart power grids, and ensuring affordable access to electricity. E, upgrading all existing buildings in the United States and building new buildings to achieve maximum energy efficiency, water efficiency, safety, affordability, comfort, and durability, including through electrification. F, spurring massive growth in clean manufacturing in the United States and removing pollution and greenhouse gas emissions from manufacturing and industry as much as technologically feasible, including by expanding acceptable renewable energy manufacturing and investing in existing manufacturing industry. G, working collaboratively with farmers and ranchers in the United States to remove pollution and greenhouse gas emissions in the agricultural sector as much as is technologically feasible, including 1, by supporting family farming, 2, by investing in sustainable farming and land use practices that increase soil health, and 3, by building a more sustainable food system that ensures universal access to healthy food.
Okay, H, want to continue?
Overhauling transportation systems in the United States to remove pollution and greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector as much as is technologically feasible, including through investment in 1, zero-emission vehicle infrastructure and manufacturing, 2, clean, affordable, and accessible public transit, and 3, high-speed rail. I, mitigating and managing the long-term adverse health, economic, and other aspects of pollution and climate change, including by providing funding for community-defined projects and strategies. J, removing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and reducing pollution by restoring natural ecosystems through proven low-tech solutions that increase soil carbon storage, such as land preservation and afforestation. K, restoring and protecting threatened, endangered, and fragile ecosystems through located and science-based projects that enhance biodiversity and support climate resilience. L, cleaning up existing hazardous waste and abandoned sites, ensuring economic development and sustainability on those sites. M, identifying other emission and pollution sources and creating solutions to remove them. And N, promoting the international exchange of technology, expertise, products, funding, and services with the aim of making the United States the international leader on climate action and to help other countries achieve a Green New Deal.
Okay, want to continue with a Green New Deal? Must?
3, a Green New Deal must be developed through transparent and inclusive consultation, collaboration, and partnership with frontline and vulnerable communities, labor unions, worker cooperatives, civil society groups, academia, and businesses. And 4, to achieve the Green New Deal goals and mobilization, a Green New Deal will require the following goals and projects. All right, so want to continue?
A, providing and leveraging in a way that ensures that the public receives appropriate ownership stakes and returns on investment, adequate capital, including through community grants, public banks, and other public financing, technical expertise, supporting policies and other forms of assistance to communities, organizations, federal, state, and local government agencies, and businesses working on Green New Deal mobilization. B, ensuring that the federal government takes into account the complete environmental and social costs of impacts of emissions through 1, existing laws, 2, new policies and programs, and 3, ensuring the frontline vulnerable communities shall not be adversely affected.
Okay, Catherine, you want to start with C?
C, providing resources, training, and high-quality education, including higher education, to all people of the United States, with a focus on frontline and vulnerable communities, so that all people of the United States may be full and equal participants in the Green New Deal mobilization.
You want to go, Matt? Starting with D?
D, making public investments in the research and development of new clean and renewable energy technologies and industries. E, directing investments to spur economic development, deepen and diversify industry and business in local and regional economies, and build wealth and community ownership while prioritizing high-quality job creation and economic, social, and environmental benefits in frontline and vulnerable communities and deindustrialized communities that may otherwise struggle with the transition away from greenhouse gas-intensive industries.
Okay. Continue, Becky.
F, ensuring the use of democratic and participatory processes that are inclusive of and led by frontline and vulnerable communities and workers to plan, implement, and administer the Green New Deal mobilization at the local level. G, ensuring that the Green New Deal mobilization creates high-quality union jobs that pay prevailing wages, hires local workers, offers training and advancement opportunities, and guarantees wage and benefit parity for workers affected by the transition.
H, guaranteeing a job with a family-sustaining wage, adequate family and medical leave, paid vacations, and retirement security to all people of the United States. I, strengthening and protecting the right of all workers to organize, unionize, and collectively bargain free of coercion, intimidation, and harassment.
J, over here. Who would like to read J? No? How about Elizabeth? Sure. Strengthening and enforcing. Yeah, no, I know
Strengthening and enforcing labor, workplace health and safety, anti-discrimination and wage and hour standards across all employers, industries, and sectors. K, enacting and enforcing trade rules, procurement standards, and border adjustments with strong labor and environmental protections. I, to stop the transfer of jobs and pollution overseas, and to grow domestic manufacturing in the United States.
L, ensuring that public lands, waters, and oceans are protected and that eminent domain is not abused. M, obtaining the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples for all decisions that affect Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories.
honoring all treaties and agreements with Indigenous peoples, and protecting and enforcing the sovereignty and the land rights of Indigenous peoples.
And ensuring a commercial environment where every business person is free from unfair competition and domination by domestic or international monopolies. And O, providing all people of the United States with high quality health care, 2, affordable, safe, and adequate housing, 3, economic security, 4, clean water, clean air, healthy, and affordable food access to nature.
Thank you to all the readers. I know it seems a little tedious to read through it page by page, but for my part, I know that when they pass phone book-sized pieces of legislation in Washington, like the Patriot Act, without a lot of the representatives having even read it, doing this at least ensures all of us that we know what this resolution is talking about. So with that, let's open discussion. Does anybody have a discussion on the motion? Brian?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Representative Brian Chino from Burlington. I want to start by saying thanks for coming today. I'm going to be in and out of the meeting because this is the crossover day, so it's the day that we have to get bills out of our committees or they go on hold for a while. But what I wanted to throw out there is while you discuss this resolution, just let you know a little bit about what the process is here with resolutions, because that might inform how you choose to handle your resolution. So in the Vermont legislature, resolutions are 2 pages. And I don't know how long that was, but it was long enough that I heard it, went upstairs, voted on stuff, and came back and you were just finishing it.
Well, the motion, Brian, is just to endorse this.
Right.
So we read this so we know what we read.
Right, but I'm just letting people know that our resolutions are 2 pages. So if you want to pass a resolution to ask us to pass a resolution, you might just keep in mind that we have 2 pages to make the point, and I would ask you to give us what you want in that resolution. You know, it would be helpful. I want to empower you to do that. And I'm happy to work with other people to bring forward any resolution that you request. The other thing I'd like to just say is that resolutions are kind of hollow. You know, like we can make a statement about how we want to do something. Right now, there's many climate change related bills sitting in committees, and there's been a failure to take action on those bills. So perhaps something you would consider in your resolution is asking that we actually take action on things that exist that are being overlooked right now. So just another thought I wanted to throw out there. I'm going to stick around and listen for a minute, and then I have to go back to committee. But I want to thank you all for coming today. It's actually really significant that you're coming on crossover day, and it really helps illustrate the failure of this body to act, this year on any significant climate change legislation. And it's going to help some of us to point to you and say, look, like the people are here demanding we do this. What are we doing?
Thank you, Brian. Can you give us a couple of examples of bills that the folks here might go home and make phone calls about tonight that haven't been moving out of committee?
I'm not going to be able to tell you off the top of my head the numbers of all these bills. What might be better is for me to send an email out to the group and later with a list.
Sure.
But some examples would be there's people asking for radical investment in weatherization, in electric vehicles, in clean energy in Vermont, looking at creating green jobs in Vermont. There's a lot of legislation around those things in terms of the short and midterm solutions, like things we can do right now to help. And then in terms of the long-term vision, I think H126 is a bill to study creating a zero-waste economy in Vermont. So that's kind of bigger than just let's chip away at the problem. That's what do we want in 30 years and how do we get from here to there? But I'll compile the list and send it out to the group if that's helpful.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I know that the weatherization bills and the electrical vehicle bills are having some trouble, believe it or not. So let's put some pressure on the representatives.
I know S60 is a Senate resolution which is brought about by 350.org, which will do several things, but it endorses the current Vermont energy plan, which would be a 90% reduction by 2050, which the state is currently missing its benchmarks for. It endorses a ban on new fossil fuel infrastructure, as well as looking into things like weatherization. We worked on this in Middlebury at Town Hall. It passed with overwhelming support. I believe it's now 40-something, 48, 49 towns that have passed this legislation, non-binding on the town level. So we'd love to see the state do that.
Okay, we're discussing the motion. This is town meeting format, just to catch everybody up. We asked the state representatives to endorse the federal Green New Deal resolution. Yeah, Bob.
I just had a question, clarification. On page 9, line 23, there's a word that I don't think I've ever seen before. I was wondering what the meaning of it is. Afforestation?
Afforestation, I assumed it meant reforestation.
Okay, well that sounds reasonable. But this is a word I haven't seen.
It's talking about increasing soil carbon storage. So land preservation and reforestation may be the word that should be used. I've never seen that word either.
Deforestation is correct.
Oh, it is? Okay. Other discussion on the motion on the floor, which is, again, to ask the state legislature to endorse the federal resolution, which we read into the record just now. Yeah, Carol?
I cannot go along with this. This is based on the same, it's tweaking, it's got some good ideas, and it's got some ideals. However, it's based not on transformational change, but on continuing the economic system that's based on ever more money, ever more jobs, ever more of the same kinds of things that the society has had for several hundred years and that has brought us to this point. So it's loaded with contradictions to me in terms of whether it's any real transformation or whether it's just finding other ways to allow us to continue being as greedy and exploitive as we have been for generations. So I cannot agree with this.
Thank you, Carol. Are there particular language changes that would eliminate the concerns that you have?
I think it's kind of loaded with contradiction.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion? Yeah, Brian.
I just want to respond to Carol's concern because one of the, I don't want to stifle other people's interest in this, but I actually do have some concerns about greenwashing the New Deal. The New Deal was actually a disaster for indigenous people. Dams were built, land was flooded, ecosystems were completely disturbed by that. And one of my concerns about some of the short-term solutions that we're talking about, like things like electric vehicles and solar cells, is that we had a decarbonization study here, and I asked the consultant, did you look at the cost of the solutions? Like, did you look at the potential pollution? And they said no. And I said, so you basically are just saying to us that if we do these 27 things or whatever it was, we'll meet our climate goal, but you didn't look at the potential harm of those things. And they said, no, we don't do that. So once again, it's not that I'm saying we shouldn't start doing some of those things, but we need to think about, like I agree with you, we need to think about the big picture. And then the zero waste economy concept is that it's like looking at the costs of the benefits, looking at, and so back to this resolution, I would still support it with the group, but I want to just validate, Carol, like what you said, because this thing is filled with language that reinforces the system we have, and it's grounded in the New Deal, which for a lot of people wasn't actually a good deal.
Thank you, Brian. Other discussion? Do people feel like they have enough information? Oh, Mash, go ahead.
I just feel like I totally understand what Carol and Brian have said, but I also feel like this is the first major attempt to get climate change on the national agenda. It's now the conversation. So I'd like to support this on a national level. In Vermont, I'd rather see us be more specific about our agricultural society and things that we can do that I see people all the time go, I don't know what to do. you know, well, we're an agrarian state, and there are things that we can do, and I'd like to get those on the top of the table in our legislature, yet support this on a national level just to get people's focus on something's got to be done quick.
Thank you. So you're saying we should think of something that's specific to Vermont in addition to supporting the National Green New Deal. I'd just like to also take off my moderator hat for a moment and address Carol's point, because I completely support your opinion on this. But I would like to point out just a couple things that are deviations from the normal way of business in Washington and in Vermont, for that matter, that are part of the reason Vermonters for a New Economy is interested in the Green New Deal. Because it is the first piece of legislation that I'm aware of, or the first big initiative, that combines the imperatives of addressing climate change with the imperatives of addressing economic inequality and the kind of oppression that we have had in this country against what they're calling frontline and vulnerable communities, which, if you look at who those people are, they're all of us at some point in our lives. It's not a group of people off to the side. It's all of us and the impacts that it's had on all of us. So if you look on page 11, point A, where it says, providing and leveraging in a way that ensures that the public receives appropriate ownership stakes and returns on investment. Adequate capital through community grants and public banks and other public financing. Technical expertise supporting policies and other forms of assistance to communities and organizations. This clause is still in the resolution mode. It's very aspirational, but it's talking about fundamentally changing some of the ownership structures that we've come to accept in the last 40 years and looking really hard at public financing, public banks, public ownership of the money systems and resources that we need to do this work. And so I'm not completely sold on this as an approach, but I am encouraged by the fact that the people that are thinking about it are at least thinking about how to do the monetary system somewhat differently with public banks and public ownership and public financing. So in Vermont, we, as many of you in the room know, we've been pushing for a public bank in Vermont for the last 8 years here, and that has not been successful yet. So if the Green New Deal was to pass at the federal level, one of the things that Vermont would need to do is to set up the Vermont Public Bank to make sure that we have the ability to finance the kinds of things that we need to do, and that our financing those things doesn't continue to fill the pockets of the elite among us at everybody else's expense. Because when we're financing public infrastructure, when we're financing things that the public wants, that should be from our public money, not from private money. So that's part of the reason I'm in support of this, and I would encourage other people to think hard about it. Knowing perfectly well it's not perfect, but we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Yes, Elizabeth, yeah.
So I have been sitting here. Carol, nice to have you here. I'm grateful that you're here. And, you know, I'm looking at how buried page 6, line E, to promote justice and equity by stopping current, preventing future, and repairing historic oppression of Indigenous peoples, communities of color, migrant communities, deindustrialized communities, depopulated rural communities, the poor, low-income workers, women, the elderly, and on so on. And I guess that my hope is that in what the resolution we draft for Vermont, for the legislature here, in the 2-pager, that we bump that up a little higher so that and the community funding that you're discussing when are the foundation on which decisions are being made going forward as we together find creative and important and humane and climate-friendly solutions say that.
Well, then, why don't you sign in, have a seat, have a seat. We're just discussing the motion that was made by the Middlebury students to get the Vermont legislature to endorse the national resolution of the Green New Deal. Is there other discussion on the motion? Yes, Rebecca.
I guess I wonder, as we're considering this motion, and there's a lot of things in here, I'm going to just to skim it, that I appreciate, but I also wonder if maybe we can do better, and maybe instead of putting our energy toward the legislature on this one, that we put our energy toward one that really delves into the issues of this and takes into account what Kara was saying, and is like a better green deal. Just something that out there.
Okay, so what you're suggesting is that the second part of this motion, I think, which was that we should have a Green New Deal for Vermont as well, that we spend a little more time on that part and figure out what that would say, and maybe not be so worried about endorsing the federal resolution. Do I understand that? Okay, great. Other discussion? I would ask the makers of the motion if you want to add something at this point.
Yeah, sure. Hi, thanks so much for everyone who's provided comments on this motion. I think from our point of view, the goal with this was just to have the Vermont legislature in some way express support for radical and rapid climate action and climate action in the most just way possible, so that I personally also share the concerns that this is not transformational enough. And also that there are so many things happening in the Vermont legislature that have been proposed that have not really gone anywhere. So to your point, I'm wondering if we maybe would think about, if we're asking for a resolution, that we could write it in a way that really stresses the type of transformational change we'd like to see both in Vermont and nationally. So sort of some sort of resolution of the Vermont legislature stating that this is a priority, that these are the parts we want to stress, really stressing the transformational change piece, while also saying we support rapid, just and transformational action on a national level.
I've got one more thing to say. Yesterday, Catherine and Brian and I were at the Climate Caucus luncheon, and all discussing this first crossover that's happening today, policy crossover. And it was so challenging because it's important that we do this big picture thinking. But I also want us to remember that we have to figure out, just very Saturnian and pragmatic, how to fund it and how to make it work. And right now, the legislature is faced with such a crunch of financing. And how are we really going to be able to come up with, clear ways of appropriating money, generating what is necessary to implement this vision. So I think that it's great that we spend time, it's important that we spend time crafting this carefully, but this is just a very first step in a longer process. So I just wanted to say that, and I feel for the Climate Caucus here in the legislature, because their hands have been tied by business as usual. And so how do we make that paradigm shift into this new vision that we're talking about, and how do we ground that?
Thank you. Henry.
I just wanted to add, I think that as compelling as any of our politely submitted proposals to the lawmakers might be, some of the last words standing in mass movement politics in this country are Martin Luther King saying in the late 60s, we have to create a crisis so powerful it cannot be ignored. Meaning we have to create a mass movement on the ground that sort of crushes the polite dialogue and creates a power vacuum, so the only way out is to do something rational with us. A couple months ago, or maybe a month ago, we were all talking about trying to support the student strike today. And, I saw a lot of, we'd really like to, but, our capacity is kind of low. That's not the kind of comment made in a burning building, right? The student climate strike is the only thing happening today. And we need to sort of reorient to getting that horse back in front of the cart and making sure that the mass movement generation is happening so that it creates context and a dialogue that's visible to the regular working Vermonter. Nobody knows about this wonderful exchange of ideas that's happening in here today unless they're already deeply plugged into the conversation. So that's sort of my contribution.
Thank you, Henry. Yep.
I've been a climate activist for 19 years. I've done a deep dive on the science, and I just always come back to Bill McKibben when he said, every time you have an argument with physics, you will lose. And in addition, physics is a really unsentimental negotiating partner. And yet again, physics is really clear when the negotiations are over. And I look at two sets of laws. One relates to a game that human beings invented, including inventing the laws and the rules. The other are physics laws. And we're at a point where physics is telling us the negotiations are almost over. And yet we prioritize the rules of a game that we invented, including all of the minutiae, and saying that, oh, that's crazy talk. We have to be sensible here. We have to be fiscally responsible. Physics just doesn't care. And I'm not an economist, but human beings are nothing if not innovative and imaginative and creative. And I think physics is giving us the memo that we can best come up with a new set of rules for how we do economics and fund this, or it's over.
Thank you. And I'd like to just add that some of the most problematic rules of the game are the rules around money and how money is created, how money funds the public infrastructure that we need and the answer that we need for climate change, and how it's going to continue to be a stumbling block in the legislature as long as they consider business as usual. The legislature spends upwards of $150 million a year on debt service to the private sector from borrowing the money that we need to build our infrastructure. If that money was coming back into the general fund because we had our own bank to issue those bonds, we would have a lot more money to address climate change, poverty, and racism in the state than we do right now. So that's my editorial. Did you have another comment?
Yeah, I think this is, I'd love to hear more from Carol about her thoughts and concerns. My understanding of what you might be pointing to is the model of our global society as being proprietarian and consumptive by nature and having enormous impact on the planet as a whole. The effort of the Green New Deal is to make it more equitable, more rational, more efficient, and nonetheless it still has this character, which is ultimately a destructive character. I still think we need to be doing something, and as much as I think we all need to be living more simply, humbly, and kindly, and I'm trying to do my piece of that and know where I can and can't get to, we need to help other people in that same trajectory of turning their behaviors. So there's a reason why we do any number of partial things on our way to a larger ultimate goal. I wonder in the resolution that we put forward if we could say something about how do we sustain the values that Vermonters care about, use it up, wear it out, make it do without, living simply, encouraging this as a principle. Physics, you can't argue with physics, we need this. And these other things are just trying to help comfy people feel comfy during the change. And I'm about to go drive to a wedding in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to be driving through Connecticut, where the highways are posted at 55, and people will be passing me at 75. And they just have a very different expectation about what they're extracting in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and New York and Connecticut and Massachusetts and most of Vermont. And we have to find ways of creating bridging pools. But we need to have language and vision about living in a way that is rational, loving, sustainable at the heart of it.
Thank you. Yes.
I think that, you know, the motion to endorse this is a good idea. We should endorse this because we'll have something in place. And we do have climate on our side. It's going to create crises. But if something's in place, we can move on. I mean, I don't see anything by a grassroots movement will move fast enough until people see danger. But it's coming. I mean, it will happen.
So the crisis that Martin Luther King talked about is out there in Mother Nature, happening every day. We do know that. Is there other discussion for or against the motion that's on the floor? And for those of you that are coming a little late, we're discussing a resolution that would ask the Vermont State Legislature to endorse the federal resolution that was introduced by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Markey for a Green New Deal. Henry?
Yeah, just in terms of the pressing need here in Vermont, thank you so much for convening this. This is such a great format. Thanks so much. I would say the thing that, you know, kind of speaking to my earlier comment, to make it more of a common issue, dairy farms are collapsing. They're getting suicide brochures with their paychecks every month. Regenerative agriculture and really changing the way that especially big dairy farms are run in this state not only addresses the water quality issues that are important to a lot of people, but also may be central to any economic proposal for this state that helps to add some fuel to this fire and create a mandate for our legislature. And I think that sort of synthetic element about regenerative agriculture being the possibly sole hope for both for the collapsing dairy industry and meaningful scale appropriate climate solutions for the state should be more prominent on this document. I don't know if there's an amendment process, but I would propose that as a friendly amendment either before or after a submission to the legislature.
Okay, well, there were two parts to the motion. One was to adopt and endorse the federal legislation, and the second was that we need a Vermont Green New Deal. And so what I hear you saying is that in the Vermont Green New Deal, you would see more of an emphasis on regenerative agriculture as a solution for the dairy industry in particular. I mean, imagine if the amount of carbon you sequestered was monetized and the dairy farmers could get a carbon sequestration check in addition to their milk checks. That's the kind of economic transformation I think you're talking about.
Ecological services.
Ecological services, exactly. So that's the kind of economic transformation we're looking at in order to make the incentive system that we have built into and baked into our economic system, which basically says the more money you make, the better it is. You change that incentive system so that the less carbon you use, the more money you make. The more organic food you grow, the more money you make. Instead of it all being based in money, that would be helpful.
Just with respect, I'm just trying to propose the idea that messaging is inserted because it has a base that's not common in this discussion, whether it's a federal Green New Deal or a state Green New Deal. It helps to illustrate the mandate to the legislature at the same time as advertising our interest in common cause with the only real economy in the state, which is the agricultural economy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other discussion?
Can I just add to what...
Imagine in the background?
I just want to add to what Henry's saying because I think some parts of it were clear that we would need the legislature to support, sponsor dairy farmers to transfer to managed grazing plus the regenerative aspect. It would take a major shift in the way they do business, as well as organic farmers, vegetable farmers being able to do crop rotations and cover crops and stop tilling and all the things they need to do to practice regenerative agriculture. It takes a shift in economies for both kinds of farmers, and we need the legislature to support them.
Great, thank you. In the back?
I'm a organic farmer, and an activist, and I really appreciate what's been brought forward, and I like the idea of supporting this legislation, but honing in on some more Vermont-specific information, and I totally support having an impact on all forms of agriculture. I think the dairy industry is going through a crisis. I totally agree with that. But I think that we need to be talking about regenerative agriculture. We need to be talking about it, but not just within the agricultural system, but within our municipalities, the way we handle our golf courses, the way we deal with our park systems, the way individuals put stuff on their lawns. We need to raise awareness to all of that and to help individuals know how they can make a difference in their own backyard. And I've been part of a soil series of educational discussions that have been happening in central Vermont, which has been really invigorating and exciting. People are coming, they're coming with their own skill sets and interests. So these discussions are just scratching the surface, and we're building networks. But so they want to learn from us farmers that are doing things that are interesting, but they also have expertise and stuff to bring to the table. So the energy is right in Vermont. This is a great place, and I appreciate all the work that you do. And so yes, let's make a statement and support this on a national level, but then let's show everybody what we can do on a state level.
Great, thank you. I can say that that is exactly what this group was set up to do, so thank you for that. How about from our federal representatives? Would you like to make a comment about the resolution or about what either Senator Sanders or Senator Leahy is doing on the federal level? Now's a good
First of
time.
all, we want to be very respectful of the process you have here. You're talking about a resolution to the Vermont legislature, and we're the federal delegation, so we appreciate the opportunity to be here and to hear what you have to say and engage. We don't want to be in a position to tell the Vermont legislature what to do, just out of respect for the separation. You know, Senator Leahy's been very supportive of the Green New Deal. He's not opposed to launching legislation. Senator Leahy's been a firm believer in actually writing legislation that will get accomplishment. Just reviewing, and I won't go into depth because I don't want to take up time in your meeting, the things he's put in place, for example, the organic farming legislation. Pat Leahy wrote that into the 1990 Farm Bill because he knew we needed safe, sustainable agriculture, a way to keep farmers to provide healthy food. He did that. On an international level, he's been working in our state foreign operations budget to help protect the rainforest, to help economies throughout the globe that are suffering from climate change. So practical application, which we've talked about. The Green New Deal is USAID aspirational. It creates a vision. He's incredibly supportive of that. He will be supporting a resolution in the U.S. Senate because Senator McConnell filed cloture yesterday on the Green New Deal, which means they'll vote on it when they get back from this break that they have coming up next week, a work period. His goal is hopefully to have it fail, put some people in a difficult position. The Democrats have a resolution they want to put forth saying climate change is real. Human activity in the past century is the driving factor in climate change, and it's up to the United States and Congress to start doing something about it. So a more concise version of the Green New Deal to put that into play. With the Republican majority in the Senate, we don't know how it'll go, but that's the shifting of the playground right now. Incredibly supportive and continues to work on legislation with practical application, which he has been doing for some 40 months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to say something more? Sure, yeah, absolutely. Senator Sanders is a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is really an outline, as we read today. It certainly doesn't have a whole lot of details in it, and it's certainly not perfect. But it does start to sort of align people around this vision of, transforming our energy systems and a host of other things to start to address climate change. And I mentioned before, I work on agriculture issues, so that's kind of the angle I've been looking at it a lot. There's a lot of conversations at the national level, whether, just it was good that even the mention of agriculture was in it. I think earlier conversations about the Green New Deal didn't have it, and I know right now there are many agriculture groups across the country trying to figure out what is the role of agriculture in with the changing climate, healthy soils, whole host of issues. So, you know, I think there's a lot of things we could do in Vermont, and again, we can't, you know, we don't really want to comment on that, but being an outline, this Green New Deal will, you know, if it moves forward, and hopefully elements of it will be a whole host of different bills. It will be agriculture bills, climate bills. We're working on climate legislation right now. It will be social justice bills, and it will hopefully be a whole compendium of policies that will get into, you know, more nitty-gritty details, right? So, again, Senator Sanders is just, you know, supportive of this bill and hopes that we can, you know, our country can come to address climate change if we're not addressing it now.
Great, thank you very much.
I just want to say too, if I could, that even though both officers are weighed in, we were whispering back and forth when the conversation came to agriculture, because it's what we do, and if you engage with the folks who are implementing agricultural practices in Vermont right now, you might be amazed at how progressive some of the work that's taking place is, and you know, without belaboring the point, the conversation around ecosystem services and carbon storage. There was an agricultural meeting yesterday with a number of, you know, USDA people, Vermont Ag and Markets, the soil conservation districts, the folks that are out working on the farms, supporting traditional dairy, among other farms, and a presentation by the Gunn Institute from the University of Vermont by some of the world experts in ecosystem services. And man, that room lit up. We went late, and they want the maps. They want to know how to start paying farmers for ecosystem services. And they're not talking about it, doing it in 2 or 3 years or in the next farm bill. They want the maps so they can start putting those contracts out this year and start focusing some of the federal dollars. And so there's the opportunity to really lead on some of this. And